Welcome to the Power of Advice series brought to you by Zurich Life Insurance in the Middle East. We're collaborating with industry leaders to educate our audience about the need and the power of financial advice so you can take optimistic action and secure your financial future.
Welcome to the episode 2 of Power of Advice podcast. My name is Manoj Podwal. I'm the head of Zurich Advisory Network. October is a month of breast cancer awareness. Organizations around the world, public entities, medical facilities, pharmaceutical companies, private corporations, they all spread a lot of word on breast cancer awareness. And rightfully so, because if you look at our own research on a couple of areas where if you look at the claims that we have paid at Zurich, 84% of the claims we paid to women, they were all related to cancer. And then we also realized that most of those claims are also regarding breast cancer. When we did a survey, 93% of the women in UAE actually are worried about cancer, but most of them are not prepared. So couldn't be a better subject than this, breast cancer awareness, in this podcast of ours. In this podcast, we're going to not just talk about the different challenges that families and people go through if they're faced with cancer, but we're also going to celebrate women in our lives and their impact on the society. And for that, we have two wonderful and powerful women with us for this podcast. Let me introduce Richa Bagnari. She's an entrepreneur. She runs she's the founder and managing director of a company called You First.
That's right.
She helps people set up businesses in UAE. Yes. So if our listeners would ever want to know where to go if they have to set up their business, that's you, Richa.
Sure.
Welcome and thank you very much for the show.
Thank you.
She's also a cancer survivor. And we very proudly say you're a Zurich customer of ours as
Yes.
well. So thank you once again, Richa, for being on the show.
Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Verushka. It's
Thank
become
you.
a habit now to have sessions with you, Doctor. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
once again gracing such an episode with Zurich. Dr. Verushka is a specialist surgeon at the Prime Hospital, the Prime Medicals, and she specializes in breast cancer treatment.
Thank you so
Once
much.
again, welcome to this show. Richa, maybe I'll start with you, if you don't mind. I think your story, Richa, is a bit familiar to a lot of us in Zurich and a lot of people who are following us on different social media handles or social media apps. Maybe I'll then change that a bit and say, Richa, what did you and your family have to go through when you had to face something as devastating as cancer? How did you cope with that through the entire process of treatment?
So I can say that no one is prepared. No one wants to hear the truth and the news that they are diagnosed. And it's not only the individual who gets cancer, but the entire family who goes through the entire journey. And it's quite painful.
Right.
So it was very shocking, not only for me, for my entire family, but they stood with me and they supported me through my entire journey, my family, my friends, my 18-year-old who was then 16-year-old.
Okay.
He turned into a man overnight.
Wow.
So I had tremendous support and love from everyone.
Right, wonderful. I have a little my cheat sheet or cheat screen over here, just so that there's a vast subject and I don't want to miss any of the points. I'll probably just look at that. Richa, also the other fact that, what kind of treatments did you have to go through during this entire process?
So,
and how long did it last, maybe?
Yeah. So I was not very lucky actually with the diagnosis, because when I was first diagnosed, they said that I would be not needing any chemos or any radiations.
Mm-hmm.
But when they did the surgery, when they realized that I would need 16 sessions of chemo and I would need radiation, I did go through that. I went through 16 sessions of chemo, 30 sessions of radiation, and that was after my first surgery. I was very unfortunate because while I was during the radiation process, my implant, my skin didn't hold up and my implant got exposed.
Oh, God. Okay.
So I actually had to live with that implant for 6 months in me, and I had to go for a bigger surgery. And that was actually, it could have been very, very dangerous because I was in the operation theater for over 11 hours.
Oh, my God.
And I was in the ICU for 3 days. So I'm just grateful and thankful that everyone's prayers worked, and I'm alive and happy.
Thank God. Thank
Yeah.
God. And we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
At Hale and Hearty now, I can say.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Even our research, and before I come to you, Dr. Verushka, says that the recovery from a breast cancer probably could take from anywhere between a few months to maybe a few years, right?
Yes, as rightly Richa said, yeah.
And a lot of chemotherapy sessions, radiotherapy sessions, and also reconstructive surgeries and so forth and so on, right?
Yes.
So from your experience, doctor, two questions, if I may ask you. As a medical professional, you treat cancer patients.
Right.
How does it make you feel when you meet them at a time when that's probably the most devastating period in their life? That's one.
Right.
And second, if you could also throw light on a little bit of how much time does it take for this entire recovery process? I know it's different for different people, right? But generally, how much time does it take for a recovery, if I can?
So, Manoj, yeah, it's we have Richa here as our example. It's devastating when we also find a diagnosis. We are suspicious when we examine a patient and we do see their scan reports. We already have a little suspicion, yes, okay, she will have a diagnosis of this kind of a disease. But we're also human. To break the news, we of course have to do it subtly, but yet also to give an impression to the patient that we are confident enough to get you through it.
Yeah.
So professionally, medically, we are there to support you. We do empathize, but yes, we need to take the strongest stand and get you through the whole journey. So that you're not afraid, you're not scared to come for your treatments, whatever they may be, and to give you the courage to be able to defeat such a disease. So it's not a death sentence.
Of course not.
We have good latest technologies to diagnose you well, to decide which stage you come in, and even if you are in later stage, still we can treat you. So that's the first question.
Okay, thank you.
The second question would be, yes, it depends on the stage when a patient comes to us. It depends on the morphology and the physiology of the patient herself.
Okay.
In terms of her age, her comorbidities, what else, her family history, her genetic makeup. And it also depends on the biology of the tumor. So we have some tumors, although we say cancer is not good, but there are some of them which are good ones and some a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah.
So it all depends on that, and the treatment varies from surgery with or without chemotherapy, with without radiation, then with the reconstructive part. We have immunotherapy right now, and we have targeted therapies also. So if a patient has to go through all that, it could be at least a year and a half, or minimum could be with just surgery, with reconstruction or without, maybe 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
But she has to follow up throughout life to check whether there's any recurrence or how she's doing. So it is a big burden, not only for the patient, but also for the family. As I said, it's not a solo disease. It's a social, economic, and physiological turn down for the patient, yeah?
Oh, okay. I can imagine. I'm sure, Richa, you've gone through that as well. I mean, I remember I got a small growth over here and I rushed to Dr. Verushka when it became a little hard, right? And the first thing she said, doesn't look like anything wrong. But that scare of just having an external growth over here for 3-4 days scared the life out of me.
Right.
So I can imagine what you would have gone through. On that connection, when you spoke about the treatment takes, how long did it take for you for the entire treatment, you said?
So it did take me close to a year and a half to finish my entire, like Dr. rightly said, and it does take that much time because the energy levels drop and the stamina drops. So kind of to get back to normal, as normal as one can be, and I think I'm better than what I was before I was diagnosed, because then you start taking care of yourself in a certain way. It just does take 1.5 year minimum, and then it has to be followed up with the regular checkups and so on. That's a lifetime thing, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And one is the time. The second is the cost associated to these treatments, right? Again, depends on where you're getting yourself treated, what kind of medical insurance cover do you have. So probably I'll try to touch upon some of those as well. Our studies say that chemotherapy could cost anywhere between 20 to 40,000 dirhams over here, depending again to which hospital you're going. And if you're talking about 16 chemotherapy sessions, that's a lot of money. A radiotherapy session could probably cost 100,000, 120,000 dirhams and above.
Very right.
And forget about the reconstructive surgery, and that's going to be so. it's an expensive disease to have, right? And these costs, if if you're not planned for it properly, and no one can plan for a disease well in advance, right? So maybe I can just, Richa, come back to you. You said you had all these sessions of chemotherapy, and you had a Zurich policy also, a critical illness plan, right? Thankfully, did that in any form or shape help you to recover on all of these costs, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely. I honestly, I stumbled upon the critical illness policy because when I was in a corporate job, the difference in the premium between a regular insurance and the premium covering critical illness was very small. So I said, might as well. And that's why
Good decision.
I just stumbled on it, and I was very lucky because you don't plan for such things, and one should.
Yeah.
I personally believe that one should plan for the worst and then hope for the best. That's what you need to do. And I actually, when I was diagnosed and I went through all these pain points of how expensive it is, the coverage came at the right time. So I was not stressed about the financial bit. My family was not stressed about the financial bit. And when that financial burden is off you, you're only focusing on getting better. You're
correct.
only focusing on recovery. You're not focusing on how am I going to pay for my next chemo session and how am I going to pay for my next radiation or my reconstructive surgery. So it really came at a good time, and thankfully so. Yeah.
Thankfully, absolutely. Doctor, if I can turn towards you, have you had situations where patients who have a proper medical insurance, I mean, health card with them, they come, but when the treatment starts, it reaches the limit.
There's a limit.
And then they don't have enough. Their savings are not enough to take care of these expenses, because we discussed about it. I mean, 16 chemotherapy sessions at 20 or 30,000 dirhams is expensive. And some of these health cards don't have those limits. Have you faced such situations? And
Yes, we face it. I can say around 70% of the time.
oh God, is it?
So, it's really sad because patients do get different kinds of insurances, and they're not, I would say, not conned into taking the wrong one, but there are always some loopholes in every insurance, and our patients have limits. And as you know, as we rightly said, it would go up to 300,000, 500,000 at least to
The
have
expenses.
the expenses.
Yeah.
So for a regular family, medium class service, it becomes very difficult to get the right treatment
Correct.
at a good hospital.
Correct.
And luckily here, at least I had a personal good experience with Zurich as well. And I would say, yes, you need to have a good coverage for critical illness, which other insurance don't do.
Okay.
They would have a lot of exclusion criteria, where especially in breast, for a woman, it's like an amputation. Yeah. So reconstruction is a very important part in the rehabilitation process for cancer, which is never covered in most of the insurance companies. So there, it's again demoralizing for a patient. As Richa rightly said, knowing that the financial part will be taken care of, you know that you can get better just thinking about yourself. It's a part where finance is all important. Without money, you can't get treatment. And without treatment, you don't get better. And
correct,
then the
absolutely.
stress factor increases, and then you add on more to yourself. So it's very important to get a very good critical illness coverage. And personally, I think Zurich, I have personal experience with them. It's something really worth having.
That's music to my ears. Thank
No,
you.
it is really worth having because there are no questions asked from Zurich. There are no questions, besides a diagnosis, that's it. They don't need anything more. And personally, they do cover it within 72 hours. I have personally gone through it, and I would really recommend anybody to have a critical illness coverage.
See, I mean, that's the moment of truth for us, and we want to live by those standards, right? So thank you for that. Maybe again, when we look at breast cancer, for instance, when we spoke about the kind of different treatments one has to go through, the cost associated to it as well. But also there's another thing that most of the time, people overlook, and that's I call it the cost of recovery, right?
the rehab.
One is the cost of treatment itself, and the treatment could last for a year, year and a half, two,
Yes.
right? Sometimes, and in critical situations could go further, even more, right? And while you're getting treated, there's a heavy cost, 500,000, 600,000, 300,000, whatever that may be, depending on the
Stage.
hospitals you are getting treated at, right? But there's also cost of recovery. And you are an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
You run your own business, so maybe this might not have impacted you that much. That's what people would think, right? But I'd like to know that when you had to be, I mean, did you have to take time off work while you had to go through all this treatment?
Yes. So I did take a couple of weeks off.
Okay.
Actually, I would say close to 3 months, because there are two kinds of chemotherapy sessions.
Okay.
So when I was taking the something called Taxol, I could still work. I
Okay.
had the energy and the capacity to work and do my regular errands. But I was lucky again, because when I was diagnosed, it was COVID times and everybody was working from home. So I still continued working from home. But when I was taking the heavier dosage of AC, I was completely not able to focus on anything. I did not know whether it was day or night. So I was that bad. But
Sorry to hear
luckily I kind of, I could overcome it, because I knew at the back of my mind that, I'm covered, everything is taken care of. And on that note, I also want to thank Zurich, because like doctor said, the insurance amount, I sent the report of my diagnosis. Before I went for my first surgery, the money was in my bank. And that is big. It's like, it's somebody's taken off a big burden off you,
Off
and
you.
now you need to just focus on getting better.
Correct. Indeed. I mean, so thanks for sharing that. While you were off work for these 3 months, and maybe again post that the treatments, did that impact work?
I actually have a brilliant team.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so I have around 11 people, 11 team members who were with me, and they did not believe that I was unwell. So they put the same amount of pressure on me. They gave me the same pain points. They spoke to me all the time. So they didn't make me feel like I was going through anything. So I was as on the job. I had my eye on the ball as much as possible, and they kept things going.
Actually, they
as
made you
normal.
feel as
Yes.
normal as you said,
Yes,
right? Would
as
have been
normal as
refreshing to be engaged while you're going through all the
Absolutely.
treatments and stuff.
Absolutely.
For an employee like us at 9 to 5, 9 to 5, who works 9 to 5? 9 to 9 maybe now. for employees, it could be devastating, right? Dr. Verushka,
is.
have you seen situations where people who are working in corporates and they have to go through this long treatment, and situations where they're not able to attend to work regularly?
Yes.
Situations where that could have resulted in a loss of employment as well?
Yes,
Have
of
you
course.
seen those situations? Could you talk
there
a
is
little?
first a fear of that, because besides COVID came in, so the last 3 years, patients were very scared to take leave. So they used to literally ration their leave, and then we would tell them, okay, so this chemo cycle will be a little bit more devastating, so rather you take leave for that. But even then, they used to work even from home, during the COVID times. So of course, yes, we have patients who have lost their jobs. We have patients who have lost their family. We have patients who have lost a lot more than just only themselves going through the whole process. So it's sad. That's the moment of truth, when you see that you're living in a real world. And it's
Absolutely.
not any magic or humane sometimes for the patient what they're going through. So because it's become so common that people don't take it as something serious if you've not gone through it yourself. So it's quite disheartening.
And these treatments do have a lot of impact on your
Of
health.
course.
Right? I mean, it has on your health, it has on your mental
Mental
health,
status.
financial health as
Of
well,
course,
right?
financial health is the number one problem that we've seen in our patients. Yeah, there are some patients who have delayed treatments because they didn't have the funds to go ahead. They went to charity organizations, but even for that, you have to prove a lot of criteria. There are many people going for it. So we had patients who've delayed treatment for more than 3 to 6 months. Even if our hospital did help, our hospital, God bless with Prime, we do help a lot of patients who go through this. We subsidize a lot. We don't charge as consultants for anything, even if it was investigation, just the minimum. So we can save as much as they can for the major issues that would happen. So we have seen a lot, yeah. And delayed treatments can delay their response. and can delay the diagnosis to a different stage. So we've had patients who've come back later, yeah, with a different stage, and then it's sad. Then we have to go back. So
And if they delay this treatment, then that could also mean the cancer could aggravate during
it
that time,
does.
right?
It does.
Oh, it does. Oh,
It's
so
like a bomb ticking. So if you don't have, it's a window period. There's a window period from a diagnosis till you get your treatment, until you
Correct.
complete your treatment.
Correct.
And then what happens further? That's called the follow-ups. But if you miss that golden period, that's difficult. So financial issues are very important to be sorted at that point of time from diagnosis.
It's strange you say that, because when we talk to a lot of probable customers and talk to them about the importance of protecting themselves against any critical illness, and we talk to probable women customers and talk about breast cancer, everybody is scared. They think, what if this happens to me? But not many are planned. So when we try to tell them how do you stay planned, right? They look at the cost of paying the premium versus, a remote possibility. But do you think, doctor, towards you probably, these days it's more prevalent?
Very common.
Very
I
common.
would say it's so common that we had a study saying every 2 minutes now we diagnose a patient with breast cancer
Seriously?
in the whole world. Yeah.
Okay. Oh
Every
my
2
God.
minutes. So our organization Prime, we see. I just diagnosed 2 patients today. Yeah.
Today?
So today. So you can imagine, we're seeing more and more, which is very sad because we just don't know the cause. So I wish we were never in denial. So
I
it
wish.
comes to denial. It cannot happen to me. So that's where we go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And some of us, when if God forbid we have to go through the cancer, and if
Right.
women have to go through breast cancer, and because of that they lose their jobs, then they have a double problem. One is they have to arrange the money for the cost of treatment, and then they have to arrange the money for their day-to-day expenses as well. And where does that come from? From their savings. So they're depleting on their savings, if they have any, right?
Yes.
Which they would have ideally kept for a future, maybe a retirement or education, university education for their children. Any instances like that where people have come and confessed and told you that, hey, this
Yes.
has happened to us?
Yes, we've had.
Sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions, Doctor.
Richard, because we see a lot of these patients, yeah, and we're so helpless because how do you give them chemotherapy? The drugs are so expensive.
Right.
How do you give that? So, at least UAE has a very nice program, the BASMA program, which they also try to recruit those kind of patients who cannot pay for their private setups, but they have a limit. So it also reaches a high amount. But we've had patients who had to stop treatment. We had to do so many things and transfer them to another center. And then they would have to come back because, they didn't get enough treatment. So we've had a lot of that, yeah.
And maybe moving on to a little bit of, we spoke a lot about treatment. We spoke a lot about recovery, cost of recovery, time it takes to recover. If you had to rewind, and I'll come to you on this question as well, if Richa, if you had to rewind a little bit and say, things that I could have done better to keep myself maybe prevented from cancer? Is that something that you would have done? And the reason I'm asking this question is many people think that a lot of things could be done to prevent, right? I'm sure there could be, doctor, you could advise us, but from a common person's perspective, what do you think you could have done?
Right. So, yes, of course, there are a lot of ways to prevent being unhealthy, and it's not only about cancer. Eat right, exercise, whatever is right for you in terms of, don't indulge in the doing like excessive smoking, drinking, or whatever it is. But like Dr. rightly said, we don't know the cause of cancer. And, I can take my own example that in my case, it was hormonal, right? So they could only say it's hormonal driven cancer. So there is, I was the fittest when I was diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have been trekking. I have summited a mountain which is 5,400 odd feet and
Wow.
all of that. And I was the fittest I had ever been in my entire life. And the next thing I knew, I had cancer. So, yes, it's good to be healthy, but it is very, very important to not live in denial, like doctor said. And the best preventive measure that you can take for yourself is to go for regular checkups and not live in denial. And that's something that I would go for.
Thank you. And what
Right,
would be
I
your
agree.
take?
Yeah, like Richa rightly got it. She hit it on the head that we don't know the cause. There are many risk factors,
Correct.
but I can tell you the fittest person can also go through it.
Okay.
So we don't know, as we say, it's hormonal, could be genetic, it could be family, illness. So we exactly cannot pinpoint the cause. So it's multifactorial, and even if you have all the boxes not ticked for the risk factors, you can still be a patient of cancer. Yeah. So, in terms of, yes, you can try to still be fit, no excessive smoking, alcohol, but I would rightly correct myself that those are not the only risk factors. There are so many that we can't even pinpoint, and which research still doesn't know the cause. So, it's impossible to say how can you prevent it.
So
You
what I
can
heard.
only screen it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Come to be screened.
Okay.
Don't be in denial.
Okay.
Come to be checked up as soon as you're 25, even 20. My youngest, sorry to say, is 21. And we're getting it in a very younger age group. So even if they were to think of saving, life savings, you don't have savings at 21.
Correct. You
or
just
even
started your career
at 35,
probably.
40. You're just trying to get
Correct.
hold of your life. So we're getting at a younger age group. So savings doesn't come into the picture. So that's why even finance would be an issue. Even though I'm a medical profession, but I'm talking about a lot of finance. Why? Because that's the real world. Well, that's what we are facing. We have all the technology, we have all the treatments available till date, what we can do. But the sad thing is, it has to be coupled with some help from everywhere else.
Correct. So the first step is not to be in denial, not to think that it's not going to happen to you. Obviously, take care of yourself is what you're both saying.
Checkups and
Right?
screenings.
From your come for regular checkups and screenings. Right. Okay. Have a critical illness plan.
Yes, that's
right.
important.
Because financially, the last thing that you want to think when
that
you're
burden.
diagnosed of a breast cancer is, oh, where am I going to get the money from? Right. Just buy the critical illness plan, send the diagnosis report to Zurich, and we'll take care of that. So that takes care of the treatment, and plan it in such a way, the coverage, that if you have to be off work for a long time, it also takes care of your expenses.
Right.
That's what our viewers would want to hear. What can they do to prevent? If they are diagnosed, what should they do? What are the costs around it? What's the kind of treatment, and what's the kind of time they'll have to be off work? I think we probably covered everything. Thank you very much, Richa, for being here. It was wonderful to have you here. Dr. Varushka, thank you once again
Thank you for
being
having
here.
us here.
It's a wonderful evening spent together with you.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.